I'm Dr. Roy Priest. I'm from Birmingham City University. That's a modern university in the heart of the UK. And one of the things I really enjoy is sharing ideas with colleagues from around the globe and sharing best practice, always with a view to creating transformational experiences for students. I've been doing this for a while. I've been at BCU for over 20 years. I love my job, and it's just really nice to be able to share ideas. I needed a picture of Birmingham to share just to give a bit of context, and I was thrilled to find this one because it really sums up the transformational experience that I've had of living in Birmingham all my life. The old church in the middle there, and the 1960s rotunda, which was under threat of being demolished, and Brummies came out in protest and said you mustn't demolish that. And then the very modern blob-like building, which was quite something for Birmingham to get such an unusual shaped building. Anyway, I slightly digress. So in this presentation, I'll be talking a bit about the context where I work and some of the issues that we're dealing with, which in my dealings with Amy and Morgan, I get the impression that there's some issues that we're dealing with which are similar. I'll talk about the employability ecosystems, working with staff, trying to change the culture within staff teams, and I'll share some of my experience of that. I'll talk a bit about data and KPIs, and then working with industry partners. As we said at the start, this is the first of three. So my intention with this first presentation is to give more of an overview, and I will go into more detail in subsequent sessions. I'm more than happy to shape those sessions 2 and 3 based on your feedback as well. If there's areas you'd like me to focus on more, that would be absolutely fine. Please just give me that feedback. So this is me. I'm an associate professor at BCU. I've experienced various roles. I was a program leader for many years. I ran our music technology courses, very successful courses, where students go on to work in a whole range of areas, from live sound to working in sound design, acoustics, theatres, all sorts of weird and wonderful and creative sectors. Prior to that, I was a musician and I was in the music industry. I only mention that because I think there's a bit of a line there through my previous life in my 20s and early 30s, which involved an awful lot of networking. It was part of my life, and it was kind of what you do, really. And I think I sort of carried that over when I joined academia. So yeah. So a bit about BCU. It's a modern university. So it was in the 60s, it was in the 70s, it was polytechnic. And then in 1992, there was a shift by the government to change polytechnics to universities. So we have around 30,000 students from all over the world, but we have an awful lot of students who are local, so they're commuter students. And many of our students come from underprivileged backgrounds, as it says there. We have over half of them are from IMD Quintile 1, so they come from the most deprived neighbourhoods in Birmingham. And that has its own challenges, particularly in terms of giving students that university experience, making sure it feels like university rather than just a continuation of college. And we do an awful lot to try and support that. Our courses are very much practice-based, and crucially, a lot of our students may lack social capital. They can't necessarily rely on friends and family to give them an in to certain industries. So being aware of that, we do all sorts of things to try and create platforms to give our students direct access to industry networks, so they can compete on a slightly more even playing field with students from slightly more privileged backgrounds. Yeah, so a significant proportion of our students are first in family to attend university, and we certainly have a real mix of ethnic groups in our university, and it's part of our proud history of Birmingham. I won't dwell too much on this, but this just gives the UK perspective and some of the drivers for change and some of the pressures that universities feel in the UK. Obviously, the rapid pace of change technology-driven change across industry sectors means that we can't be complacent in terms of how we deliver our programs. And in order to keep up, there's two main ways in which we seek to do that. One is through our higher level research, and the other is through direct engagement with industry. The STEAM agenda is a continuous thread that we focus on in our college, and it encourages us to work more broadly across our university with colleagues across the different colleges, and to give our students opportunities to come out of their comfort zone and work with students on other courses as well. There's a real emphasis on graduate entrepreneurship, and I think that's something that we've really learned to enhance over the last few years. I work in a building called Steam House, which I'll perhaps come on to in one of the subsequent sessions. One of the reasons why we designed Steam House like we did was to support our students who are looking to become entrepreneurs, and I'll talk more about that later. So yes, in terms of drivers from the government, from a government's point of view, they are only really interested in universities that can deliver wealth and success and growth for the country. So they look at universities in terms of how many graduates get so-called good careers and good graduate outcomes. We could discuss about what that actually means, but the fact is that is the framework that we work within, and we have to try and find ways to ensure that our students, our graduates rather, succeed and are seen to be successful. So yes, the Office for Students, which is part of the UK government, they do a questionnaire to graduates 15 months after they complete their programmes to ask them what they're doing now, and then they code those outcomes and they sort them into what are deemed to be successful outcomes and less successful outcomes. And then we have the Teaching Excellence Framework, which is like a gold, silver, bronze award system, which again is an incentive from government for universities to improve their practice and to improve their offer to students. And all of this, the graduate outcomes and the TEF framework, are shared externally in terms of league tables. So certainly in the UK, there's it's shared through media such as The Guardian, The Times, and it's a way that prospective students can decide which is the best university for them. So these are obviously, they really help to focus our mind in the university. So overall, what are we trying to do? We're obviously trying to improve student engagement. We want our students to enjoy being with us, to enjoy their time, to enjoy learning. And one of the things that I've witnessed over the years is that the drive in schools and colleges, because obviously they're under pressure as well, to get students through and to pass and to get good grades. Sometimes when by the time they come to us, the sheer joy of learning has maybe been slightly diminished by that kind of system that they've had to come through. So we do what we can to try and get back to the love of learning and just to relax and enjoy learning, basically, and enjoy the experience. This next point here is very close to my heart. It's around seeing the individual. So obviously some of our programs are huge. Our computer science programs and our cybersecurity programs, they have many, many students. And it's very easy for a student to get lost in that mass and to not necessarily feel like they're getting the individual support that they might need. And also that students come onto a program maybe with a particular mindset and an idea of what the program is going to be like and the kind of graduate outcomes that they might expect when they finish the program. And that can change. And so often a student will completely switch from thinking that there'll be one area that they'd really enjoy and that they'd really excel in, and there's a new area that they hadn't experienced before, and that becomes their main focus, and their confidence builds, and it shifts their whole direction. And that's part of the joy of the job for me, I think, is supporting students through that journey and supporting their individual graduate identities. And part of that, which comes onto my work in terms of industry engagement, is to give them opportunities for recognisable, relatable role models that have been where they are, that they can, as I say, relate to, and that can give them a pathway to success. So yes, so in terms of embedding employability in the curriculum, for me, a lot of my work is around developing platforms that both support industry engagement, support the students, but support colleagues as well. Colleagues are under pressure to do all sorts of things, to get good first-time pass rates, to do research, all the things that we're all involved with as part of our day-to-day jobs. And sometimes reaching out to industry and building those networks can seem like one more job, one more task. And so I'm always mindful of that and trying to find ways of doing that that are convenient and work in terms of time. So the employability ecosystem, what we mean by this is that if we get our job right, the students will come on the course, they will enjoy it, they will succeed, they will have good graduate outcomes, and they'll be happy to keep in contact with us when they graduate, and they will contribute to the ongoing development of the programs. And that is something that we really have had great success with. And we seek to do this in a number of ways, including informal mentorship from industry partners, input into assessment design, case studies, involvement in student projects, etc. And it is this kind of virtuous circle. And there's a video link that I think has been shared prior to this. It's in the deck of slides as well, which is from a panel session that I did, where it gives a real flavour of the kind of dynamic that I'm talking about, where it's a very positive interaction. So yes, just go back one. So yeah, maximising the potential for ongoing communication. I'm a big advocate of informality. I've been around universities for a while, and I've witnessed quite often engagement with companies can be, years can go by, and a company might come in and help to validate a new course or new program rather, and then we don't see them again for a while. And to me, that is a real missed opportunity. So the way that I like to work is to keep that engagement going, find ways to engage, and then we can really get a fruitful relationship that is beneficial to us, the students, and the industry partners. And it is a holistic approach, encompassing research, knowledge transfer, curriculum development, and our program marketing as well. So the ways that we actually promote our programs, we put industry engagement at the heart of that, which kind of sets us apart slightly from some of the other universities in the UK. So this was the panel session I was talking about. I love this day. It was a brilliant day at work. We had a networking session where students were able to network with many more industry colleagues that are on that panel there. And what really struck me was that students need support to do this. You can't just put students and industry professionals in a room together and expect them all just to start chatting, especially since COVID, where I'm sure you've witnessed the same thing, where students are a bit more introverted and might struggle to network, basically. So we supported that, and we sort of bridged some of that gap, and it was a wonderful session. And in terms of the panel discussion, just a few anecdotes from that. So Deepali, who's speaking there, she was one of our students, and she's now successfully working in the broadcast industry, going around the world doing all sorts of things for the Olympics and all sorts of amazing things. And she was talking about how she lacked confidence, both as a student and then when she was in the workplace. And when she was speaking to the students earlier before the panel session, I could sense that really resonated for students. It can be quite daunting when you see people that have got successful careers and you think they seem so confident, and just to hear that they are, they struggle just like the students when they were younger. Another one for you was Russell, who's fourth from the left, and he was talking about why he engages with us. It's partly because they struggle to get the graduates with the right skills to fulfill the jobs that he offers in the acoustics industry. And companies like his, they have to work harder to reach out to universities to get the skills that they need. But really what he was saying was he just really enjoys it. It's an absolute pleasure talking to the students, talking to staff. And I think it's that kind of fun element and that pleasurable element needs to be kept at the heart of what we do. And then just finally, Becky, who's third from the left, she just talked about how she was one of our students as well, by the way. And she talked about how, why wouldn't you want to share your experience? If you've got something, if you've learned and you've made your way in the world, why wouldn't you want to share that? So sometimes I talk to colleagues and they are slightly reticent about reaching out to industry, feeling like there might be a barrier there, or that they might not be necessarily welcomed. But in my experience, industry partners are only too happy to contribute. They want to share their knowledge. So the key thing for me is the last few years really has been surfacing best practice. Some of this good work is hidden away in corners, and you have to dig around to find it. And then it's like, well, what can we do to cascade that? So that's been key to my work. And part of that really is about taking colleagues through a journey. So there are some colleagues, perhaps like myself, who worked in industry before coming into academia, who are naturally quite confident in talking to companies. And then we have some colleagues, particularly those who came through academia, stayed, did a PhD, started lecturing, and it can feel slightly alien reaching out to companies, and there's lots we can do to support them. So we find that academics may lack industry networks, or they may have a few people that they know, but they're not quite sure what to do with those contacts. Something that I did, which hadn't been done before, was to do some data gathering. Colleagues tell me that I love my spreadsheets. I don't really. It's just that it was a way of gathering some information. So what I did, I went from one program to the next, trying to tease out how they interact with industry. What does it actually look like on the ground? We can assume an awful lot, but in actual fact, how many case studies are there? How many live briefs? How many companies do we actually interact with on which courses? And I captured that on a single spreadsheet with each program represented on a single tab. And that was maybe slightly sneaky, but the idea was that colleagues could compare what they were doing on their courses and their programs with their colleagues working in different areas, to try and inspire, to try and get some momentum and act as a catalyst for change. And the other part to it is ownership of industry engagement at an individual and a program level. And I think that's kind of the journey that we've been on in terms of, it mentions there about goal setting, and I think on the next slide it talks about coming on to IPRs as well. That might seem a bit heavy-handed. It's not meant to be like that. I think in a university there are certain activities that have a lot of kudos, such as publications of research in international journals, which is obviously fantastic. And obviously in a more day-to-day way, first-time pass rates through courses and successful outcomes through programs. Sometimes industry engagement doesn't necessarily get the kudos of some of those activities. And I've been pushing over the last few years to find ways of recognising that. So in order to recognise it, you need to be able to measure something. And I know that measuring things isn't necessarily the be all and end all, but it does help. It helps as to create momentum. So we've been trying to change the way that we approach goals when we have our review meetings, to include industry engagement as part of that, and to find things that we can do that can sort of reflect success. Yes, so it talks there about it being a team-based approach. So we're trying to do both, really, trying to put the responsibility on the individual to think about industry engagement and employability as another facet of their work, but also to work with colleagues and to not feel that they're on their own in this endeavour. And that's been really important. We talk a lot in BCU about the 3D academic, which again sometimes can be a bit controversial. It's almost as if we want everything out of everybody. Fantastic teachers, fantastic researchers, and they engage with industry and they come with a network of industry partners. That's a big ask. And when we interview for new staff, obviously the ratio of those three aspects varies. But we're trying to say that to some extent, colleagues should be engaged in all three areas, but moreover, they should feed in from one to the other. The one thing should support the other. The industry engagement can feed into teaching, can feed into research. And in terms of how we do this, I think the key one there is mentorship. I tend to find that there's a group of colleagues who are naturally doing these kind of things, industry engagement, employability in the curriculum, before it was a thing. You know, they've been doing it naturally for a good while. You've got some colleagues who it's not quite for them, and they're slightly more traditional maybe in some of their approaches. But the key is the colleagues in the middle, who with a bit of support and some mentorship can open up their practice and evolve. So yes, part of my job is to capture that best practice. I've found out an awful lot for the last few years of this role I've been involved with, things I wasn't aware of that are just amazing, that were not necessarily championed in the right way. Sharing models for engagement. Some of the things that I find colleagues find so useful seem quite simple to me, and I was concerned about being patronising, but actually colleagues tell me they want this kind of support. So things like crib sheets for how to reach out to companies for that initial cold call. How can I couch that in a way that is positive and engaging? And yeah, so sharing experience of things like that can be really beneficial. And then yeah, capturing and addressing barriers. Sometimes barriers are so simple. So for instance, a key way for us to engage with industry is through guest lectures, and we sometimes, there's paperwork around that. We have the UK VI check, which is like a visa check we have to do, and sometimes we pay our guests as well, and colleagues can find that all rather off-putting and time-consuming. So we've found ways to resolve that so that it is very straightforward, and that is one simple barrier that has been addressed. And I've witnessed that. I've witnessed how colleagues who are reticent are now engaging guest lecturers. So yeah, part of what I do is about providing toolkits, platforms and frameworks, things to make life easier so that some of the barriers go away and they get some of the benefits of that engagement. These are some examples which I can talk about more in the subsequent sessions. I'm sure, like a lot of colleagues on this call, I'm sure a lot of you have guest lectures and guest workshops. I like to video wherever possible to create an archive so that students can dip in and find past sessions that they find interesting. I will just touch upon the Industrial Mentors online forums, because this is something that you may wish to talk to me about some more, and I'll be happy to support anybody that was interested. For the last 10 years, I've had online forums related to particular programs where networks of industry partners can talk directly to students at any point during their studies. And they can talk about, have conversations around technical aspects, around research, careers, anything really. And it works really well. It allows students to, in a safe environment, because obviously it comes under BCU's control, in a safe environment to talk to industry partners, to build their confidence, to get that kind of insider knowledge. And it's a simple thing. It used to be on Moodle, VLE, and now it's on Teams, which is much better, much more convenient for everyone. We have special interest groups, which again, I can come on to more next time. And we have subject and college level industrial advisory boards. I'm mindful of time, but I will happily talk in more detail about those. So yeah, I've managed to try to keep it to half an hour. I'm very keen to get your feedback and to answer any questions. this slide is basically saying, if you want to reach out to me, please do so. I enjoy having a global network of people from across the globe who are as enthused about some of these things as I am. And if you want to reach out, please do. So I don't know how you want to kick off, Amy, but I'm open to any questions.